Welcome into the latest episode of the 5 Reasons Podcast. I'm Ethan Skolnick here, as always, with Chris Whittingham. Today we come to you from Hard Rock Stadium. The field is cleared out. The locker room is cleared out. We have found a studio. I will get to what's going on in the studio next to us in a second. But want to just, now that you're here with us, let you know that you can subscribe to our podcast. You get all of our old episodes as well as all of our new episodes as soon as they post on any of our 12 or more podcast apps. Also, check out the other 14 podcasts in our network. I'm sure the 3 yards per carry will be a particularly good listen this week, as will Miami Heat Beat, with the Heat playing well and the Dolphins eliminated from the playoffs. So we're going to comment on that here. Also, check out the new podcasts in our network, Chamber Podcast and Out for the Count. We've got a full-fledged website that's going to be coming in the next month or so. It's going to be easier to find all of the pods in our network, as well as breaking news, aggregated content, columns, videos, merchandise, and more. But if you hear some noise in the background, there are a couple things going on. First, there's still some music being played here in the stadium. Last game that we'll see in the stadium for the Dolphins this season. Also, though, as we walked into this studio that we're doing the podcast, there are some guys next to us. I thought they were talking about the Dolphins. They were talking about toxic relationships.
Yes.
One guy is counseling someone else to stay away from something.
Yeah, it was like, and it's just such heartbreak and devastation and all these things that are bad. It's just, man. And it was, and Ethan thought it was about the Dolphins. Like, yeah, well, those are kind of synonyms at this point.
Yeah, they were talking about women, but basically we equated the two. So I think basically the relationship that Dolphin fans have with their team is similar to the relationship that a lot of people have with their significant others, or the opposite sex, or maybe the same sex, or whatever. We don't discriminate here on the podcast. But what we want to get into today is the end, and an end that we kind of saw coming a while ago.
Sure.
I was debating whether to turn this into 30 minutes of Told You So's. But you probably
and you want to do 30 minutes of Told You So's?
And I want to, but I don't know that I would subject you to that. All I'll say is that point differential does not lie. And what you've seen from the Adam Gase Dolphins is they're not good. They're not good. And we've talked about that this year. We tried to pump up hope with some close wins, particularly close wins, obviously, at home, since they only have one road win. And so we tried to make this seem better than maybe it was. But it wasn't. It wasn't. And when you are fourth from worst in the league in point differential, that's what you are. That's what you are. And if you look at the point differential last season and you look at it the season before, this has just not been a good team. And for everybody who's gone out there and said, well, but the injuries. Okay, the injuries, I'll give you some of that. But those who were saying, well, if you had just pulled out the game in Indy and you'd pulled out the game in Cincinnati, you'd be 9-5 right now. Okay, if Charles Clay hadn't fastened himself to that end zone we're looking at right there, if you didn't have one of the craziest plays in NFL history against the Patriots, and if Cody Parkey, your former kicker, who was nearly perfect when he was with you, makes a kick for the Bears in this stadium, if those three things don't happen in the stadium, you're 4-10.
Yeah.
You're 4-10. Your point differential and all the other metrics that you have, based on the way Football Reference figures it out, had you at 5-9. So I had people saying, well, that just proves Adam Gase is a really good coach because he's gotten more. No, Adam Gase has been lucky. He's been lucky, okay? Because the point differential, the yard differential, which is even worse than the point differential, are an indication of the football team that you're coaching. And I thought a couple of things today were really symbolic, okay? There's that one shot that was caught on TV where your defense is basically backed up against your own end zone, and the Jaguars are about to go in, and they cut to Adam Gase, and he's not watching the game. He's designing a play sitting on a bench.
He said he wasn't designing a play. He said he was getting the next sequence, the next series ready, and getting it communicated to everyone what he was going to do on that next possession and what he had seen.
Okay, and what did I say from the very beginning of this season? He needs to give up play calling.
Yeah.
He needs to coach the entire football team.
Yeah, I agree.
He has an inexperienced, and we can say it now, fairly incompetent defensive coordinator.
At best, out of his depth.
Okay, right. Okay. That whether or not it was his decision or Steve Ross's decision to go with someone with that level of experience, the reality is that's what he has. He knows that's what he has. And the optics of him ignoring what's going on the defense to design the next series of plays. This is why I said very early in the season, this is why, by the way, the 3 yards per carry guys who have been all over me for a variety of things, I'm not even sure what anymore, they even agreed with this. Because Simon Clancy asked Adam Gase about play calling last year, and Gase snapped at him when Simon suggested maybe that he give it up. We talked about the same thing from this very same booth 10 weeks ago, where I was talking about the difficulties that Cam Cameron had trying to coach the team while he was doing play calling. It is clear that all Adam Gase wants to do with his team is call plays. That's it. Yeah. He doesn't want to do the rest of it.
He's an offensive coordinator with the job title of head coach. And the evidence of his offensive coordinating is a team that's in the bottom 5 of the NFL, and again today goes under 200 yards. I know and it's the 5th time this year and 3rd time in 4 games that they've gone under 200 yards. It's been pathetic the last month from an offensive point of view. And we talked about last week how there was a 3 possession stretch in which it was a 1-point game against Minnesota in which they weren't able to move the ball. As a matter of fact, they had negative yards on those series, and I think, you look at today, and it's the same thing where you get the opening drive, which we talked about a bunch as a black mark against them.
They figured that out.
They figured that out.
5 of the last 6 weeks.
So should we move on to 2nd, 3rd, and 4th drives? Because it's just been they've started really well, but they've got nothing after that. And today, you go on a 75-yard drive to open the game and still finish under 200 yards. Like, it's calamitous, and I have the full play chart. I'll pull it up here and kind of read it out because after they score on that opening drive, it's horrendous. It's okay. So here it is: 3 plays punt, 3 plays punt, 4 plays missed field goal. That was after a turnover in which you got the ball inside of Jacksonville territory and managed to do nothing with it, including missing a field goal. Then 6 plays punt, 3 plays fumble, 5 plays punt, 3 plays punt, 3 plays pick 6, 6 plays punt, end of the game. That's everything you did after you scored on the opening drive. Had a bunch of ideas or moving guys around, different running backs, getting Kalen Ballage the ball in space.
That was a nice drive.
Right, it was great. It was perfectly orchestrated. But after that, you produced 110 yards of offense. It's appalling. And I want to start with the quarterback because I think the quarterback again did nothing. Made no throws. I mean, what was their longest completion was to Ballage, and that actually is the thing that sparked our 3 yards per carry booth because I don't care that he threw the ball into the flat to Kalen Ballage and Kalen Ballage did something with it. Like, that's not Ryan Tannehill's doing. And then had a nice throw on that drive to Amendola. After that, longest completion was 14 yards.
Right.
Like, everything was short. And again and again, and to me this is the thing, if we're going to figure out, like, you mentioned how the record doesn't reflect Adam Gase's performance. I do think it does in this respect. Adam Gase's entire tenure is built upon have fewer turnovers than the other team. And try and create some on defense, which they've done and did again today, and try and although Cody Kessler having the ball slip through his hands is not really you generating turnovers. That's more falling on a football that fell out for no reason. But it's about having fewer turnovers than the other team. And again, they were in the game in the 4th quarter because they didn't turn the ball over. They were a calamity, but they were in the game when they didn't turn the ball over, and the game broke when they did turn the ball over. That's the entire philosophy. And frankly, it's not a terribly bad one because
no, it is. I'm going to stop you. It is a terribly bad philosophy because it was the Wannstedt philosophy, and all I heard about during the Wannstedt years was get this conservative idiot out of the coaching box.
Correct. But now he doesn't. Adam Gase didn't say, a punt is okay. But I think what he's coached is not turning the ball over is okay. And Channing Crowder all the time parrots the Tony Sparano philosophy, which was if every drive ends in a kick, it was a successful drive, whether it's an extra point, a field goal, or a punt, as long as we're not giving the ball to the other team. I agree with you. It's way too conservative, but it's how the Dolphins have won games. When the Dolphins have won games, it's when they're getting interceptions, it's when they're scoring touchdowns on defense, and when Ryan Tannehill doesn't turn the ball over. Ryan Tannehill's quarterback rating is really high. We got into a huge argument about this today. Ryan Tannehill's quarterback rating is high again today. Even before the pick 6, it was in the 100s when he did nothing for 3 quarters. Again, it was in the 100s. Why? Because he doesn't throw interceptions. And if that's and that's the bedrock philosophy of this team, and when we're trying to figure out why do they outperform expectations, is because they don't turn the ball over. And okay, your job is to win games, and that's how you've won games, but in the end, you're sitting around going, did anyone make a play today? Did anyone make a play today? other than Kalen Ballage on the opening drive. Nobody made a play
on
today.
On offense, no. The defensive line made plays today.
Defense is brilliant.
But they forced him into a 4th and 46.
Right.
The offense, nobody. Well, let's look at the throws to receivers. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's look, how many targets to receivers today?
Okay,
to
so
outside receivers.
3 targets for 40 yards on 3 catches for Amendola. 3 targets, 2 catches, 13 yards for Parker. 2 targets, 1 catch, 5 yards for Kenny Stills.
I mean, that last one is just what has he done with Kenny Stills this season?
No, nothing.
What?
So in total, that is 6 catches for 58 yards
to wide
receivers today.
I mean, this is a joke. Yeah. That's a quarter and a half of offense. That's not 4 quarters. And like we said, 5 games now that they went under 200 yards. And so I don't want to dwell too much on today, other than that 3rd and 4 call. I don't know what that was. Okay, what was that? That trick play that you're down 10 at midfield and you're calling a trick. You don't have anything you can go to that's a basic play.
Clearly, no. Clearly, no.
How are we at that stage? I don't want to focus too much on today. I really don't. We have to look forward at this point. Okay, what's done is done. What I've been saying about Adam Gase all year, I think, is borne out. Right? It's maybe he's a great offensive mind. He's not a great offensive mind while he also has to coach the rest of the team. Okay. He'll be a great offensive coordinator somewhere else, possibly, if he has a really good quarterback. I'm not ruling that out. But him coaching the entire team and doing that, none of it's working. And it hasn't worked the entire season, and he's been a bad football coach this year. I don't care.
And you could even argue
about the injuries.
Even when they made the playoffs, you could argue that obviously they were winning games, but his offenses were bottom 3rd in the league then.
Right.
It does bring the whole thing into question, which is what you've been saying all along. And look, I haven't been with you the whole way, and I think you've been harsh in varying points, but I mean, the way that this season has ended the last 2 weeks is a perfect reflection of everything that's happened, and it finally reflecting in the results, right? Because it didn't reflect in the results, and we're sitting around here throwing our hands up going, what the hell's going on? I think the entire league was asking that question. People looking at the Dolphins being in the playoff race saying, how? And the answer is they don't turn the ball over, but again today, offensively, you can't move the ball, and if you're going under 200 yards, and I mean, Adam Gase, today his answer when, put to him that he had 3 games out of 4 with under 200 yards is saying we're just getting physically beaten up. And whatever it is, whether it's scheme, whether it's quarterback, whether it's offensive line, it's not enough from this offense. And I think Adam Gase now, if you're talking about moving forward, his job is in question, and everyone's job is in question.
That's what this rest of this podcast is going to be about. Right when I get past this, remember I had mentioned to you the Dolphins were in danger of falling from 29th down to 31st in offense over the last 2 weeks.
Well, the Jets played really well today.
The Jets lost an overtime game to the Packers, but they also put up I think 400 total yards. Okay, so that's 200 more than the Dolphins.
38 points.
So they're going to pass them now. Buffalo, not so much. As we speak here, Buffalo's down. Oh, they lost 24-12.
Yeah.
But Josh Allen did put up 217. They rushed for 72. So they
289 yards of offense.
Okay, so they outgained the Dolphins by 100 today. So it's very possible that by the end of next week, if the Dolphins get outgained by the Bills up there, they'll be 31st in the league in offense. Here's what I would do if I were Steve Ross, and I think we need to pivot here because there's not much. How do we waste time on this game? Adam Gase came out. We never got a chance to talk about it. Adam Gase's ridiculous comment about losing games on the road, because they'd faced a bunch of hot teams. When, by the way, the teams that they face, some of them were hotter at the time, like the Bengals and Colts and a couple others, but the teams that they faced had a 500 record other than the Dolphins, other than the games against the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So that was a ridiculous comment. Was Gase going to say that the Jaguars were hot? Have the Jaguars been hot?
No.
Okay. Was the Jaguars hot?
And at the very least, if you're hanging on to the fact that the Dolphins are good at home, this is calamitous. This is a horrendous performance. I thought the Dolphins would win the game based strictly off the location of where the game was being played, and to not summon any kind of performance when you go into the day not mathematically ruled out. Yeah, you need the Bills to win in New England and all these, and if not, then 5 different results to go your way. But I mean, it's absolutely absurd that. Obviously, they finished the year 6-2, which in theory isn't a bad home record, but it's ridiculous that when the whole idea of the season is home road split and you can't even beat the Jags at home, it's ridiculous.
Today's edition of the 5 Reasons Sports Podcast is brought to you by AutoNation. Since AutoNation is America's largest automotive retailer, chances are they have the vehicle you're looking for. Shop from over 100,000 new cars, trucks, vans, and sport utilities. From the luxury of Mercedes-Benz to that Chevy pickup you've always wanted, they've got it. AutoNation helps finance over 430,000 people every year, and you could be next. Get a great rate today. AutoNation strives to make the car buying process quick and easy. but most of all, stress-free. In addition to an extensive selection, all pre-owned vehicles go through a rigorous 125-point inspection and come with an everyday no-haggle price. One price, no pressure, guaranteed. Start your search right now at AutoNation.com.
We'll get back to our episode here in a second, but first I want to tell you about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Just took care of a friend of mine today, and that is Brunt Insurance, where you can find all of your protection under one roof. They offer home, auto, commercial, and life insurance, and they're licensed to write insurance for the entire state of Florida. That's Pensacola all the way down to the Keys. They've got multiple carriers for all the product lines to ensure you're paying the lowest rate in your particular area. Also, they are proud sponsors of the Homes for Heroes program, which offers special discounts for first responders, teachers, military, and healthcare professionals. So make sure that you call Greg at 954-589-2204 to reach Brunt Insurance, or go to bruntinsurance.com. He's going to blame it on the fact that it wasn't warm enough today, possibly. Maybe that's what they'll go with. All right, let's get to what really matters now. Steve Ross was in a box today with Mike Tannenbaum and Dan Marino. I always wonder what might have been if Marino, and I was there in 2004 in Mobile, if it hadn't been raining the day that he was watching offensive linemen and quarterbacks out on, what is it called, Ladd Stadium in Mobile, bored off his ass, okay? Yeah. There's a great story with Marino, actually. After he was named football, president of whatever it was, they didn't even know. I think they didn't know. May he rest in peace. Didn't know what the job was. But president of football operations, and they moved Rick Spielman, who they probably should have kept around, as it turned out. They moved Rick Spielman to, above Dave Wannstedt. That was the new power structure. And so Dan was up there, and he's watching offensive linemen in Mobile, and he's bored off his ass, and it's raining, and it's a cold metal bench. And then he asked later how he gets to the airport. Who was getting him a car service to get to the airport, and Spielman or someone in Spielman's staff had to say, "We're on a football operations budget. We all hop in a cab." That was basically the end of it. Dan quit about a week later. But I always wonder, what would have been the case if Dan had stayed.
I will say, though,
be the head of the organization.
The one thing about being around this team a little bit in the last few years is you do see Marino at everything. Mm-hmm. I do wonder if he spent the last 3 and 4 years embedding himself in the organization. He's at practice every day. He's doing the air quotes boring stuff. I wonder if now that his television career is over, and now that maybe he's in a different stage of his life, if he does want to take it on. I know this has been Brendan Tobin's corner for a while, is letting Marino run the thing, but he's in the box with Ross. He's had all the events. He's presumably developed an opinion on how all this should run, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that Marino gets it.
How would you feel about Marino and a group of former players with a brain who have been following the organization? How would you feel about Jason Taylor's wanted to get involved in the organization for a while. There's other guys, have wanted to get involved in the organization. I have always wondered why it is that the Dolphins push all of their elite former players to community relations. Mm-hmm. Okay, and why they're not embedded. Why was Patrick Surtain, for instance, not a coach on this staff? He wanted to be a head coach. He was one of the best players of that era. Why is he going to American Heritage? Okay, and then obviously to Alabama. Mm-hmm. I've always wondered why you don't involve more of those guys in that way. They have no problem involving guys from 40, what is it now? I'm looking at the perfect season, 72, 46 years ago. Yeah. Okay, but the guys from 15, 20 years ago, they don't involve in any of that stuff. But the reason I bring up Marino is not so much because I think that's actually going to happen, because I don't think it is. But
I think it could.
I'm going to poll it to see what fans think of it. Yeah. But I'm talking about the photo there. You have Ross sitting between Marino and Tannenbaum. Tannenbaum looks like the Southwest commercial. Okay. What a getaway. Dan looks like every time I've seen Dan at the stadium lately, he looks angry, right? Yeah. He looks intense and angry. Yeah. And Ross looks like, I've just made a big mistake. I mean, he's basically Anchorman, right? That milk was a bad choice. Tannenbaum and Gase were a bad choice, okay? Yeah. Here's what I've been saying. I've been saying they need to get a new Tannenbaum needs to go. They need to get a new president of football operations. They need to then, this is what I have been saying until today, then that person needs to evaluate Adam Gase and any coaching candidates.
I don't even know if Stephen Ross will give him that much. I think it might be a full house clearing, because the one thing that we've gotten from images of him, because he was seen as well at US Bank Stadium a week ago, just looking absolutely haggard and beaten down. He's both privately and had it leaked publicly that he has not liked some of the moves, particularly the Minkah Fitzpatrick draft pick. Now, that's not something you get too mad about because Minkah Fitzpatrick is a good player, but according to reports, wanted Lamar Jackson, and Alfredo was saying on 3 yards per carry this week that, well, if you wanted Lamar Jackson, then take Lamar Jackson. But, I mean, all the time owners get hit with being meddlesome, and owners don't like being tagged as well. You're going to get involved in the football operations. Don't tell me what to do. And I think, like, for example, we watched Jacksonville today. I think my personal theory is that Shahid Khan, the owner of the Jags, was so in love with the team from last year that he wanted Blake Bortles to come back, and that Blake Bortles is his fault, not Coughlin and Marone's fault. Like that's my working theory, that the owner got involved there, falling in love with the thing, and put that together. And I think owners, especially Ross, the way that he's been maligned, he probably erred on the side of, I don't want to be meddlesome because it's going to leak. If I demand that Lamar Jackson be taken, it's going to get leaked out there that I was the one that did that. So I'll trust my football guys in this one.
Leaked anyway.
Right, exactly. And I think that in the end, he ended up probably being right on that. And I think if he hasn't been entirely convinced by what's happening, and these results have happened, I was genuinely curious what would have happened if the Dolphins won their last 2 games. They finished 9-7, and if there's an extension at the end of it because they won 2 meaningless games. Because meaningless games have decided things in the past.
Yes.
The fact that today was so soul-crushing, I do think that the emotional man that is Stephen Ross, who had to pay an extra $100 million for the team because Wayne Huizenga charged him for winning that 1-15 game with Greg Camarillo, that I do wonder if the emotional being of Stephen Ross just says, I'm tired of this, everyone's gone.
Well, a couple of things on that. The first thing, I think, when you look at it again, what I've been saying is you bring in a president and you let him evaluate the coach against other coaching candidates. What I would do in the next 2 days at this point is I would fire Adam Gase. And I would.
It's the first time you've called for that.
That's
by the
the first time. It's enough. Okay, this was a home game against the Jaguars. It's a 5th time under 200 yards. It's enough. All right. And to me, what you do is you let Gase go. Gives you more time to figure out the coaching situation. Sure. Also lets future GM and president candidates, and depending on what you decide to do with Grier, and we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
But it allows them to know they're going to get to pick a coach. And so I think you let him go. I think you can let Burke coach the last game of the defense if you want. He's a lame duck anyway.
Yeah.
And I think you have Darren Rizzi coach the team for 1 game. I did get some pushback about that on Twitter because people are like, "Oh, then you're going to lose a great special teams coach because he doesn't get the head coaching job." No, you're not. Not. You give him an opportunity.
Rizzi's kind of been a lifer around here, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been here a while. I think you let him go up to Buffalo and coach the game. You see how the players respond to him. You don't look. It's just like with Jim Bates or with Todd Bowles. Okay, and in both cases there might have been a case to keep those guys, but with Bates they were getting Saban, so it didn't matter. But I think, and Campbell and others, they've had interim coaches. But I think you see how they respond in 1 game. Maybe Rizzi throws his hat into the ring. All right, I actually don't think that Dolphin fans would hate that move because I think that the educated Dolphin fan,
looks
at Darren Rizzi and says, well, his units have been generally effective. Like that's been the one sort of oasis here.
Right. I think Dolphin fans would not respond well to that because it's someone within the organization when you want a full break. I think, again, it might sort of be the perception of the new guy not getting to pick his coach. But I think in general, the special teams coach as head coach is an underutilized aspect.
Oh, I agree.
Like, I almost wonder if it's a market inefficiency at this point because Harbaugh is the only one. Harbaugh was successful, and I just think you get a picture. Again, if we're talking about, a play caller should worry about play calling. If you're going to bring in the offensive coordinator because Sean McVay is the genius, like to be your head coach, like because you want to corner that guy, you want to pay him more money than you pay a coordinator. Like I don't know if that
model has not worked for the Dolphins. Tony Sperano was the offensive coordinator, play caller in Dallas before he came. Cam Cameron was an offensive coordinator before he came. Joe Philbin wasn't even an offensive coordinator;
but
he was an offensive
he wasn't
game
calling
planner.
plays. Yeah, but I will say though, the one counter to that is the 3 Super Bowl favorites right now are the Chiefs, the Saints, and the Rams, and all of those teams employ a head coach who also calls plays.
Okay,
so I'm not.
Two of them are complete outliers. All right, so Andy Reid is a genius at what he does.
Agreed,
that's been proven. Sean Payton, like him or not like him, all right. The reality is he bonded with a quarterback in a way that the two of them are completely aligned. So I don't think it's I don't. To me, those are exceptions rather than the rule. the reason I like the special teams content, there have been other guys. Mike Westhoff should have gotten the head coaching job here. Okay, he was the best special teams coach in the league. There were players who wanted him to be the head coach. They went with Wannstedt instead.
Didn't Keith Armstrong get some support too at one point?
Keith Armstrong got Dave Taub is another guy. There have been some guys who've been in the space. The reason I like the idea of a special teams coach as the head coach is because the special teams coach has to know every player on the roster.
Correct.
They are used to building up guys and getting more out of them than you're accustomed to getting out of them, because a lot of them are fringe NFL players that they have to find a role for. It requires you to be creative. It's not the same as Gase taking a player who is talented like Kenyon Drake and picking apart the things he can't do to make sure that he doesn't get touches, okay? Special teams coaches, it's the opposite. They're finding guys and they're figuring out ways to make them work. They are, the Rodney Magruder developers of the NFL, okay? They maximize talent. And so that's one reason I like it. The other reason I like it is they're not on the field most of the time.
Sure.
So it's not like with Gase where he's worried about the offense entirely when they're on the field, and then he needs to spend the time that the defense and the special teams are on the field to prepare for the offense.
And like Rizzi, he's already in charge of challenges and timeouts, which, by the way, is the thing that is most associated with head coaching. And by the way, we were earlier in the year trying to figure out why doesn't Gase get criticized. That's another one. He doesn't have timeout and challenge.
He's not even doing it
because he's not doing it. Right, exactly. But that's the 90% of coaching criticism is down to those two things, and the Dolphins have a guy who's in charge of it. And by the way, are the Dolphins bad at clock management? Are the Dolphins bad with challenges? We haven't really had that many instances where you're seeing clearly the Dolphins are struggling in that area.
Rizzi, they had a couple of kicks blocked, right? Other than that,
today they missed a field goal.
Today they missed one field goal. With a guy, again, we thought they had a kicking problem potentially before the season.
Right.
The kicker's been good. They consistently have turned over kickers. The punter has been good. Jakeem Grant was really good when he was healthy. Okay, they've gone through different returners.
Again, that's a sixth-round fine.
The sixth-round fine, and they've been good on coverage. I'm not saying he's necessarily the long-term answer. I'm just saying
give it a thought.
I don't understand why some Dolphin fans got so attached to Adam Gase when all you had to look at was the quarterback that he was working with before. The primary quarterback is one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time, and yet people held it against Philbin that he was basically, they thought, like a pencil pusher for Aaron Rodgers, but they weren't holding it against Gase that he was working with Manning. And I don't know, and this idea, it was funny today because CBS put up, Ryan Tannehill 11-1 in his last 12 at home, and then the next play was the interception.
Really?
Okay. So what Gase got credit for was the way Tannehill was playing before. Now, Tannehill has not progressed since. Now, we can say it's the shoulder, we can say it's the ankle, we can say it's the knee, we can say it's a lot of different things.
Or we can say he's just the same guy he's always been.
Right. It just clearly hasn't worked. But what I hold Gase accountable for is, again, if you're going to say you didn't have your quarterback, I'm going to say, well, you decided that Brock Osweiler was your best option as a backup. So and like you've said before, they were 2-3 with Osweiler. So it's not so now they're 500 with Tannehill, right? This year. So that's what they are. But my thing on Rizzi is I would make him the head coach now for 1 week, and then he throws his name in the mix. And I will bet you that there will be players on this team that they like who will probably push for him in the offseason. That doesn't mean you have to keep him. It just means he's a candidate. I don't know what Adam Gase has done to make himself more equipped to be the head coach of this team than what Darren Rizzi has done. I don't know what I don't know what that one thing is. And so that's the direction I would go. Now, let's get to Grier.
Sure.
Because I've had a hard time separating this. Tannenbaum to me, Tannenbaum's 2 primary jobs before he got the Dolphins job were, one, he was a cap specialist for Parcells. Not a talent scout, cap specialist.
Sure.
Okay? And second thing was to be a sports agent. Those are the 2 things he did. So those 2 things you would think would be good attributes to have to get free agents, right? You're an agent, you know how to deal with players. You're a cap specialist, you know how to fit them in. Right. You know how to deal with agents, right? So I understood to a certain degree what Ross saw there. But to have him as the lead talent evaluator never made a lot of sense to me. Now, Grier is another story. The thing about the Dolphins drafts that's really hard to figure out is they either really hit or really miss. There's not a lot in between.
Not a lot of league average starters out of that mix.
No, it's you have Tunsil, who looks like an elite left tackle. You have Fitzpatrick, which whatever we want to say about the quarterback, you and I both thought they should trade up and take a quarterback. So this is not revisionist history, or even take Lamar Jackson, trade down and take a quarterback. We both said it
on draft night.
Draft night,
like Josh Rosen sitting at 10. Like, go get him.
Go get him.
Go get him.
So basically, that's what we were suggesting, but. they didn't do it, whatever. They took Fitzpatrick. He's a very good player.
Sure.
I don't have an issue with that. They took Baker in the 3rd round. He looks like a good player. Tunsil's a really good player. And Xavier Howard, obviously not available today, is a really, really good player.
Kalen Ballage is
Kalen Ballage,
a promising start.
I like what I see from Kalen Ballage. So there's been some good picks. There's also been the ones that, if I were Ross, I would want to get to the bottom of.
Yeah.
Okay? Jordan Phillips, Devontae Parker. Now, Devontae Parker predates a little bit because Hickey was still here.
Sure.
Charles Harris had a sack today. He's done nothing the whole season.
Mike Gesicki
does
not look like an NFL player.
He doesn't. He doesn't look like an NFL starter for sure.
And I bought the hype on that one because it's athleticism. It's what the Dolphins have needed.
Yep.
And by the way, that's if you want to hold another thing against Adam Gase, the complete failure to get anything out of the tight end position has been a recurring theme for 3 years now. And it dates back to Charles Clay since he left. They've got nothing out of that position. Nothing.
No, I mean, Jordan Cameron was concussion. Julius Thomas was
old,
and just not very effective at that point. But so with Grier, it's hard for me to. One of the things that's hard to evaluate is he's been here so long in so many different roles. The Dolphins have not had success in the macro, and yet when you talk to people in the micro, they like him. But I think that Ross has to basically pick one person, okay? And to me, the person's not in the organization.
Sure.
He has to pick one person. Now, the guy that I would go get is George Paton.
Tell us about him.
And so, I was here. I covered the Dolphins in the early 2000s. I was there every day, the Wannstedt teams, the Spielman teams. George Paton was Rick Spielman's number 2. Rick, he came with Rick. They're very close. Now, Rick's tenure is, there's some revisionist history here too, but I'm going to try to clarify because I don't think you can evaluate George Paton without evaluating Rick Spielman. And I was in Rick Spielman's office, okay? I saw his draft notes on various players because what happens here is when things start to go bad in an organization, everybody kind of picks a reporter. And so the Wannstedt years, there were a bunch of coaches and executives and the head coach, and all of them had a reporter, okay, that they would deal with. In some cases, some reporters, I had a couple of people, okay, in the organization that kind of gave their point of view. But I wanted to see things on paper. And so I saw what Spielman's draft notes were on Fletcher and Breeze. I saw what Spielman's draft notes were on Eddie Moore, and Anquan Bolden, which are 2 of the worst draft decisions that the Dolphins have ever made.
Yep.
I know what the grades were. I know what happened in those draft rooms where basically his grades were overruled by the head coach, okay, and by other coaches on the staff who were aligned with the head coach. And those 2 decisions, they paid for those 2 decisions. If you have Drew Brees and Anquan Bolden, you have a pretty good 2000s.
I mean, it's still being coached by Dave Wannstedt, but yeah.
You also had Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas and Pat Surtain and Sam Madison. God. You would have been all right. And so I have always been more of a believer in Rick than others. I also know what went into 2004 when he made the decision to trade for A.J. Feely. People don't like that decision in retrospect. I understand it. Feely was 4-1 with Philadelphia. They got fooled a little bit by the Andy Reid thing, and that played into it. But I understood what went into that, and I understood what went into the trade for Lamar Gordon, which was desperation. Your best player, the center of your offense, your coach will only run the ball, and you need to find a back. And here was a back who had been a number 2 back who looked like he was emerging, and so they made a decision. We're going to trade a 3rd-round pick for Lamar Gordon. Didn't work out, okay, but I understood. Rick was under the gun. So I've always been more of a believer in Rick than others, and I think Rick's track record in Minnesota, no, they haven't won a Super Bowl. They've drafted a lot of good players.
Their roster's exceptional.
Their roster's really good.
You go back to last week, and you just see the disparity in talent between the Dolphins and the Vikings all over the field.
Yep.
The one thing, though, I will hold against them is that they went for Keenum, Bridgewater, and all these different guys last year, and this year they went for Cousins. Minnesota is being held back by their decisions at quarterback. And that's obviously, we're talking about Tannenbaum, Gase, Grier. Tannehill is the other one. That's the 4th tenet of this franchise that might all be gone in the space of a few weeks.
But I understand that. And look, you got to get the quarterback right. And so it's disingenuous for me to say, well, the Dolphins didn't get the quarterback right, and that's their fault, and it's not Spielman's fault that he hasn't gotten the quarterback right. He's made big moves, though. They went after Favre. They've tried, okay?
Yep.
The Dolphins have not tried. They've tried. So I am a believer generally in Spielman, okay? And I think, as it turned out, the organization would have been better off if he'd stuck around. He and Saban hardly spoke to each other the year they were together, and so it's hard to evaluate that. Peyton was his number 2. Peyton handled a lot of the pro stuff. I just always found him to be a very sharp guy.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of those people who's been talked about for a long time as someone who should be running an organization.
And Jason La Canfora linked him with the job today of CBS Sports.
That's a second national reporter who has. He has not interviewed for big jobs, but he has said this. He's made it clear to people that this year he will.
Sure.
He knows the organization. To me, you make that move, and then we were looking at it because I think you allow him to pick a coach, and the coach on their staff that I would look at is George Edwards. George Edwards is familiar with the Dolphin organization. The players loved him. Okay, he's in his early 50s, so he's not over the hill, but he's also not like straight out of grade school like we've seen here recently. He has some experience. He's a defensive coach. I think the Dolphins have gotten too hung up on making sure they get an offensive coach. Neither of their units are good. Okay,
right.
Get a guy who can lead a team. All right, who the players are going to respect. To me, I would look at and. Peyton can choose wherever he wants, but that is a direction I would look at, is Peyton with George Edwards, and you make a decision if you want to keep Grier or you don't want to keep Grier. And again, you interview Rizzi, you interview other coaching candidates. The other thing I want to shoot down, and we don't want to dwell too long on this particular podcast, the other thing I want to shoot down is this idea that, well, there aren't any good coaching candidates out there. We hear that all the time. The reality is, people don't really know if somebody's a good head coach until they're a good
Would
head
anyone
coach.
have thought that Sean McVay, the
No.
offensive coordinator under Jay Gruden, was going to be the coaching genius that solved football? Like, get out of here with that.
Right.
Like, you can say, there are 32 coordinators of every team. There's college that you can pull from. Like, there's any number of ideas. I don't agree with that. I think you try, and I will say, though, the last time they did a coaching search, Simon was reading out all the candidates they pulled in. It was like, oof. They avoided disaster with like 3 of them.
Oh, no, and there are a lot of them. Look, they loved Marone, right? Yeah. So they've liked. Look, Ross has liked a lot of coaching candidates who didn't make sense. Unfortunately, there were coaching candidates they've interviewed, like a Mike Tomlin over the years, that others in the organization didn't think made sense. But I think to me, where you're at right now, and I'll do something after. I know you're going on vacation. I'll do something after the Bills game next week to wrap the whole thing up. But to me, where you're at. The look on Steve Ross's face today. Yeah. And the other thing I want to make clear while we're still standing in the stadium, those are the loudest boos I've heard since Joe Philbin was the coach. They have this, and it.
I remember at points last year, particularly with Jay Cutler, when Jay Cutler was quarterbacking, there was "We Want Mores," and whenever they went 3 and out, there were some pretty loud ones. But yeah, the one at the end, and it was kind of a weird one, right? It was in the fourth quarter. They just handed the ball off up the middle on 2nd down, and they got 2 yards.
Yeah, it was a 2nd down.
Right. It was bizarre. It was bizarre timing, but you're right. The boos were unbelievably loud.
But I felt like last year it was a boo because you wanted somebody else.
Correct.
So it was about Cutler and Moore.
This was just voicing disapproval.
This was about Adam Gase.
Yeah.
Last year it wasn't about Adam Gase.
And about everything.
It was about everything, but it's about Gase and Tannehill.
Yeah.
Last year it was an understanding of, okay, it's not Gase's fault. Like, I didn't pin anything on Gase last year. Even the decision to bring in Cutler for $10 million, which backfired on them. Look, you lost your starting quarterback a few days before.
And you tried to fix
season.
it. You tried.
You did what you could.
You talk about not trying.
Kaepernick would have been my choice. This owner wasn't going to bring Kaepernick in and defy his buddy in the White House. Okay, that's fine. But the reality is,
it's more like this. I think Ross would have done it. I don't think the coach would have done it. I don't think Gase would have run it.
I would like to find out at some point which of the two of them it was.
Yeah.
Because there's been different stories on that. But I wasn't blaming him for last year.
Sure.
And I wasn't killing him for, obviously, the first season when he lost Tannehill after 13 games. But it is what it is at this point. This is not good enough.
Hey, this is Parrish from the Light Skin Opinions podcast. And if you haven't been listening to our show, you've been missing stuff like this.
Better super light skin or white buddy on your team? Tyler Johnson, right? Or the little dude who played backup point guard for the Sixers. What's his name?
McConnell?
Yes.
Nah, I'll go with Tyler Johnson.
Yeah, he said Johnson.
I'm taking McConnell.
Really?
Hell yeah, McConnell's strong, dog.
And he looked like one of them alt-right dudes.
He looked like it, but he's strong. He don't turn the ball over.
I don't like Johnson, but I don't really like McConnell either.
But you put the ball in McConnell's hands. He comes off the bench for Philly, and he handles their whole team when he's in the game. Like, it runs through him. He's a legit.
I can't rock with that haircut, man.
Y'all some haters on the.
Even though TJ got some fucked up haircuts too.
TJ got bad teeth and everything.
He looked like an Amish hoodlum.
I want to change my vote. I'm going with McConnell.
Yeah, let's go McConnell. Hey.
Join me, Alf, and Chris every week on the Light Skinned Opinions podcast, only on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
So best guess, right? We talked about 4 figures: Tannenbaum, Grier, Gase, and Tannehill. How many of those 4 are back?
Tannenbaum will not be back.
Okay.
I think he figures out a way to keep Grier. Maybe it's in another capacity. Maybe
it's a demotion back to some of his old work.
Perhaps, and then maybe he leaves after a year.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to keep Gase until today.
Yeah.
I think today is too much. And the fourth one, Tannehill, I mean, I think that's a conversation that you need to have with whoever the new team president is. What do you think of this guy? The problem at the quarterback position is they squandered the year that they needed to do it. The year to do it was last offseason when you had 5 quarterbacks in the first round and you were in the 11th spot, so you had the means
or
to
even
go up
or even once Tannehill gets hurt, just go the year with Matt Moore.
Just go the year with Matt
3-13 and draft one of the guys that everyone has now.
But they put themselves in a position where it's going to be very hard to move up.
Darnold was exceptional today. Darnold was like 350 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Well,
today
these guys are getting experience now, and so that's to me there's a big problem is that you squandered the year to do it, and now the only option out there is Teddy Bridgewater, and I would be happy for him to come back.
Joe Flacco's corpse.
Right, and I don't know that's not better. And so, you bring in Bridgewater, it's a better story. Mm-hmm. I think it's been one of those, absence makes the heart grow fonder things with Teddy. Like, he wasn't playing at that high a level for Minnesota. But if you want to bring him in as a bridge, you draft a guy in the 4th round. I will say 60% chance Tannehill is not back.
Okay.
But that's, I think, where we're at.
So you think Grier back in a different capacity and then Tannenbaum and Gase gone?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna say everyone's gone. I really do. I think Tannehill's gonna go. And I think maybe they draft Will Grier. I think they bring in some veteran that starts the first 3 games, and then you put the rookie in. Like, if they don't, I think Ross is fed up. He's visually fed up, and I just don't know who in this organization is going to talk him out of it unless Marino does, because Marino's the only one with the cachet to do it, and I think Marino is probably just as fed up as he is. So
Dan Marino threw for more yards in quarters. Dan Marino threw for more yards in quarters.
Yeah.
Than the Dolphins have gained in 5 games,
3 of their last
rushing and passing this season. You think Dan Marino looked at that shit today and was good with it?
Thank you for listening to the 5 Reasons Podcast. Thank you so much.